Hey everyone! The Marvel Cinematic Universe is now facing its biggest change ever now that Disney's purchase and merger of Fox Studios is official. How will this affect the Marvel lineup, Avengers 4 and beyond? And the announced Fox Marvel properties like Deadpool, X-Men Dark Phoenix, and New Mutants, and X-Force. Well, we'll get to the MCU's future, but first, welcome to New Rockstars News. It's our deep dive into all the biggest stories this week, so we're also going to talk about the new Iron Fist trailer, a possible villain for Spider-Man Far From Home, some Easter eggs in the upcoming Spider-Man PS4 game, and the new Watchmen series on HBO. I'm Erik Voss. Joining me at this table is Mr. Sam Bashor.
Hello, it's a pizza boy here.
Yeah, we ordered a pizza, and Sam was here, and we talked down to him so much. We know it's a belated birthday boy with the It balloon here floating behind you. Yeah.
And our friends at Fresh Brothers, not a sponsor, they just got good pizza.
Yum, yum. And welcome back again. It has been a minute since you've been able to host with us, but it wasn't the same without you.
I am so sorry, but I'm excited. I'm ready to talk about it, especially Iron Fist. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it, and we'll get started with our top story, the Marvel's now official merger with the Fox Marvel Universe, thanks to the approved deal for Disney to purchase all of Fox's film and TV properties, which include Deadpool and the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. And let's start by talking timeline here. So what this means for the upcoming movies that we've been anticipating. So it looks like Disney still plans to release the Fox movies that were completed or in the middle of production at the time of acquisition. So that includes X-Men Dark Phoenix, which still has a release date of February 14th, 2019, and the New Mutants, which was originally set to come out last April, but was moved back to August 2nd, 2019.
I totally forgot about that. It was April, then it was later. It was in a month from now, and then it's a full year
way
away.
Back. Just go, keep going. Yeah, and we've had a trailer for that too. Like we don't have a trailer for Dark Phoenix yet. We had a full trailer. That was actually the first episode of the show that we did, was breaking down that trailer. Now there's also other movies that were rumored or at least being developed on the Fox side of things, like Doctor Doom or Gambit with like Channing Tatum attached. A Silver Surfer movie was in the works, but those will probably not happen, or maybe they'll be reworked when things move over to Disney. None of those were even finished script wise or started shooting yet, so those aren't going to happen. But the question is how this will affect X-Force, the follow-up to Deadpool 2. Director Drew Goddard was supposed to begin shooting this October, but it sounds like if they stick to this, he might have missed the boat there. However, this week, the Deadpool movie Twitter account tweeted a recruitment poster taking applications to join the X-Force and suggesting that this movie might still be happening, right? Or maybe Ryan Reynolds is just using social media to keep X-Force from getting overlooked during this transition, because that's essentially how we got the first Deadpool movie made, is just like went on social media and crowdsourced the whole excitement for that. But now I'm thinking, like, when it comes to the upcoming 2019 Marvel movies, Captain Marvel, Avengers 4, Spider-Man Far From Home, this merger doesn't necessarily mean that we'll see a bunch of X-Men save the day in those movies. It's it's a little too soon. Captain Marvel and Avengers 4 have wrapped principal production, and the story for Spider-Man 2 is pretty set at this point. Now, the turnaround time on these big budget movies is roughly 3 years, so we should expect any Disney Marvel X-Men movies until 2022 at the soonest. Though, since all those movies do go through reshoots months after the fact, it could be fun to include like a short Deadpool cameo in a post-credit scene, or just like a flash of him. Do you think Disney and Marvel should fully integrate all the X-Men and Deadpool and Cable and the Fantastic Four into the Marvel Cinematic Universe the way all the other characters are? Or could it be worth it for Disney maybe to keep some of them produced by like a separate sub-studio to maintain the edgier brand that Deadpool has carved out?
I guess maybe what was Disney's more adult branch?
Touchstone, yeah.
Which is not having. Hopefully, blink twice if you guys are okay. I haven't heard anything from you for a while.
Check their apartment.
Yeah, really quick. You smell something that's bad, call somebody. Disney does have more adult brands or properties that they could kind of shuffle these properties over to, kind of like how Warner Brothers they did that with their new line with Shazam, so that you have another production house that's working on it. It doesn't quite change much. That's actually a little bit different, but I could see them taking like Deadpool or their more adult properties like X-Force X-Force, because clearly like that's set up to be R-rated, and you should do it that way because that's the precedent that you set. So go ahead and go with that. But when it comes to integrating the rest into the MCU, I feel like you could. Like, I remember Doctor Who had a kind of like this like unspoken rule about how their multiple shows would cross over with each other, that your R-rated characters could come over to the younger shows like Doctor Who, but they couldn't go to the like Sarah Jane Chronicles because that was meant for young kids. But the Doctor could go down to Sarah Jane and cross over there, and Sarah Jane can come to the Doctor Who. Doctor Who was like no man's land, or that was free for all, everyone could go there, but none of the other characters could go up to Torchwood that had those like more adult themed, like sex themed, more violent storylines, which I thought was kind of interesting in a way to kind of like keep your audiences safe and not get complaints from people.
Right.
So I feel like there's a way to have characters from the R-rated properties kind of show up and use their R-rated storytelling and comedy and humor to maybe like kind of freshen up the Avengers movies in some way. But for every other X-Men character in Fantastic Four, throw them in the mix. Come on, why not?
And it's time for a reboot, I think, for some of those, for sure. Absolutely, with Fantastic Four.
Don't call it a comeback, am I right? It's just a reboot.
You know, it's interesting. Like, I feel like it would be odd to see Deadpool show up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe Avengers saga as we know it right now. His humor just feels like it's cut from a completely different cloth. And, like, there are funny, wisecracking characters in the MCU that I feel like Deadpool would be in a weird conflict, like, tonally speaking. But what I love about, like, the Deadpool comics is it is part of the Marvel Universe in the comics, and you do see Spider-Man, you do see other characters show up in Deadpool's world, and hopefully what this means is they'll be able to continue making Deadpool movies, just have a much more interesting pool of characters to pull in and team up with them and join. So it's not just, Wolverine cameos and Charles Xavier cameos and Negasonic Teenage Warhead and other obscure ones. You might have Iron Man show up and just be like, oh, God, leave me alone,
Yeah. No, I'd be on board. And also I feel like a lot of those actors would be on board with playing with those characters as well, which would be really cool. And maybe moving forward, kind of how DC's like, no, we're just telling movies now. Don't worry. It's not like a connected thing. Marvel might be doing the same thing. We don't know, because like they planned for this and like they set up this. That doesn't mean they can't go forward. There's plenty of videos on this channel that you could watch that are some amazing ideas of what they could do. But also, if they wanted to kind of split it up and be like, we still want to tell stories with these characters and we don't want it to actually mean anything to the rest of the world, kind of like how Black Panther was, where it kind of it will affect, but it's more a deal. It's more personal. You could have a brand through Disney or through Touchstone or through keep using Fox and keep using that title where like our Fox movies are more violent. Yeah. Also, Fox owns like Alien and stuff, so like I don't know.
They do. They own Alien. They own the Avatar movies. Yeah, it's interesting because I think the perception is, Fox has kind of blown it, and like Marvel has to come in and save that. Fox has been a very successful studio, and these franchises have been great. The reason why they sold to Disney is they're just looking further down the line, and Disney has their own streaming service that's going to compete with Netflix, and Fox is like, well, we don't have the infrastructure to really compete with that the way that like Comcast might, because Comcast also owns the distribution of how like your content gets to you, and Fox doesn't really have that as much. So they're probably like, well, we've never been more valuable than we are right now. Let's just go ahead and sell and make as much bang for our buck as we can, and make Comcast and Disney go in a bidding war for us so we can get, what is it, $71.3 billion? Some crazy, ungodly amount of money. Yeah. So I think it's not that like Fox is doing anything wrong. It's still a very successful, very productive studio that I think should be kept intact. Like I'm sure Disney, I'm not going to tell these like studio execs out to do this because I'm sure they already know, but hopefully they keep some version of Fox intact so that they can continue to not only produce these 3 movies that are in the pipeline, 2 to 3 movies that are in the pipeline, but continue producing some movies that are just part of this sub brand, the way they can just keep Fox as like a touchstone. You know
what is interesting is because as far as we knew as people who are not involved with the purchase or sale of these giant studios, but as people who just hear about and report on it, one of the early talks was that their Fox News brand was going to be its own thing somewhere else. And I don't know if that's still true.
It still is. Fox News was not part of the purchase.
Okay,
they're
cool.
Separate.
So that's interesting. So that with that, because Disney has it leans more left instead of like right, like with what Fox News' brand is. This is not getting political, but it's like if Disney owned that and it kind of wanted to make it a little bit more like its own brand, I feel like they would try to change the name a little bit, but keep the idea of Fox as a studio that you own now and you can use to make more adult stories, but maybe don't call it Fox because that's Fox over there now. Like that's Fox, and now you're something else now. Yeah,
they might just come up with some kind of new name that the name isn't that important.
It's not. It was just an idea that just came to my head.
No, but that is an interesting point. It's Kevin Feige has said that like there is room for an R-rated superhero movie in the Marvel 10. It can be a big 10, but it's gonna have to require them to change the game. I think within our bubble, we're often just talking about how big a deal this is, but it really is going to change the whole MCU as we know it. Because as soon as Avengers 4 happens, Phase 4 we don't know anything about. This is uncharted territory that we're going into. So yeah, we may see not just like two different sides to this universe. We could see several different smaller brands that they're going to pursue and just see which ones are the most successful. Because once you finish up this Avengers story, unless you continue with like legacy characters or something like that, what is next? You have, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which who knows what's happening there.
Oops.
And then you have more Spider-Man movies and hopefully more Black Panther and Doctor Strange movies. But yeah, I think it might be wise for Disney to not just have Fox as its own kind of side of their universe, but have other things that they just, rather than just having two things that are in competition with each other, have like everything kind of split off in its own direction and just see which one is the most.
And as far as I know, you got a good point, because also like the Marvel TV stuff is already kind of in its own world, which to other people's dismay, I wish it was more connected. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah, and it's interesting because we're also talking about shows like Legion, which are part of the Fox side of things now, are going to be like joining the Disney world. And I don't want any of these shows to have to like change their brand or anything to become more family friendly or more or broader or more universally appealing, because I think that's one thing that Fox has done a little bit better than some of these other superhero brands is like trying out being a bit more experimental. If you consider something like Logan or Deadpool to be experiments that definitely paid off, and I want to see more of that, more experimentation, tonally speaking.
100%. Well, I'm on board.
Yeah, let us know what you think in the comments below. Are you hoping that Deadpool can maintain his identity? Are you worried that he's going to have to change who he is? Is there a version of Deadpool that could exist and stay the same? Should he appear in Avengers movies, or should Avengers appear in his movies? Light up the comments below and tweet us both. Okay, guys, a new trailer for Netflix's Iron Fist just dropped, and the footage is definitely getting fans excited. So let's break down the big details that you need to know from this trailer. The trailer focuses largely on the villain Davos, aka Steel Serpent. He's played by Sacha Dhawan. Davos takes Danny Rand's chi, it seems, with a glowing red fist of his own. And if you look closely, you'll notice that Danny's hand never appears to be lit up when Davos fights him with his red fist. Ooh. So maybe Davos stole the chi from Danny, or maybe he got it through some other means. Like, notice how in the trailer we also see a shot of a decomposing corpse with an Iron Fist mask. Yikes. And perhaps that could be the body of Orson Randall. Or there's also another shot of the Iron Fist brand on a cut of parchment, which could be human skin. And I'm thinking maybe Davos tore this off of the corpse's chest. He's able to get some version of the chi from the corpse.
Yikes! I never even...
Some really dark stuff.
Yeah, it's either that or a big
pretty
cookie.
Leathery.
Yeah. Oatmeal.
Well, in addition to returns by Colleen Wing and Misty Knight from the first season, this trailer also includes shots of a new villain, Typhoid Mary, played by Alice Eve. Now, Typhoid Mary is historically a Daredevil villain. She has associations with the Hand. This show will drop on September 7th. It will be 10 episodes long, as opposed to the typical 13 episodes for Marvel Netflix seasons.
Good call.
So, what from this trailer, Sam, excites you the most?
The fighting immediately looks better. Or at least the cinematography of how they're capturing it. It's like, hey, man, you know what? I don't know why Danny had to go out there in the open with his shaggy hair and like in this bad beard. It's like, give him, in this shot, it's okay. But like in other fighting shots, it's covering here. And he's got a hood on, so all you see is this. Perfect. That's what you need.
It feels more classic to the character,
But also easier to hide the stunt double so it can look better. And I do like the joke where it's like, we're going to need some help. And it's like Misty. And I love Simone Missick as Misty Knight. She's amazing. And she's great in Luke Cage season 1, 2, and in The Defenders. But like, I'm like, Luke's out there. And Luke doesn't really get affected that much by the Iron Fist, so it'd probably be good. Jessica as well was super effective in fighting. But I'm glad Misty's there. Also, I guess she kind of owes Danny one with the new robotic arm. So that's cool. The fighting looks great. And also, the move with the chi. If you guys are fans of Avatar: The Last Airbender or Korra, The Legend of Korra, that was a move they would do to take away people's chi so they couldn't be benders anymore. That was a move they would do, was energy bending. And I was like, that's 100% not connected, but I just love that because I was like, oh, if they're going to play with chi, that show was based on like chi healing techniques. And so if they're trying to at least be somewhat true to Eastern teachings, like that's actually a really cool detail in there, which I enjoyed. And also the actor who plays Davos, he looks like he can actually fight. So I'm on board when he starts fighting. And a Red Fist looks, even though the Gold Fist will always, that's the best part of what Iron Fist has given anything, is the way that looks. The Red Fist looks awesome. Typhoid Mary, I did some research recently. She's a troubling character in the sense of how, Legion he does not have multiple personality disorder or did. He does not have that.
It's a different thing. It's a mutation.
Yeah, he's schizophrenic, but also there's a chance that he's disassociated with his own reality. He doesn't know how to connect with what is actually happening because he's so powerful. What a cool take. Typhoid Mary she went through some trauma and she has multiple personalities. There is Mary, who is Mary is just normal. She's like regular old Alice Eve. Then there's Typhoid, who is sometimes she's a mutant. Usually she's a mutant and she has powers and she's more violent. That's the assassin. And then there's Bloody Mary, who is like the murderous, rampagey, scary one. And it's like, that's a really poor way to paint mental illness, especially now. It's from a different time, so I understand that. So I'm not ragging on it there, but it's like, just be careful where you go. And also, she is a mutant. She has like telekinetic or pyrokinetic powers, so that is a cool way to, let's see how Danny's gonna punch his way out of this one.
Hopefully, though, like with other things like this, like Legion and like things like Split. Like there's been some really good pop culture and cinema that have done this in a very tasteful way, in a very like in-depth way. I think the point is just put time into it, put effort into like fleshing out the character and developing the character, so it's not just like we're doing it for cool reasons, or it's just we can get something cool out of this. Like really dig into the characters' like mental health and how they got this way, and give them true dimension and see how they struggle with it. And then also that way you can start to like point in little things of like, this is why it's science fiction, or why it's not just mental health that's cool. Mental health problems that are cool.
100%. Or she's a demon because mental illness. But also, one of the origins, because I don't know, when I was reading, it was a little hard to follow where the origins landed with Typhoid, the most recent iteration of her. But there was one iteration that Daredevil's kind of responsible for how she is the way that she is. And are you familiar with Frank Miller's Daredevil run? That's where Elektra came from, and a lot of the stuff you love. So, and the costume, the black costume, there is a moment where he's going on a rampage, and he goes into a brothel to get to somebody. One of the prostitutes tries to get on him. He goes, this. She tumbles out the window and she dies. And you're like, whoa. And he immediately stops everything he's doing. And he's like, I went too far. He went over the board. And then it retconned, reversed, that was her. And and so she survived because of her mutant ability, and it went on from there. It may be changed now, but I thought that was kind of fun, that maybe that could be another way that Iron Fist ties back to Daredevil too.
I'm just grateful that Netflix is finally doing fewer episodes. Wasn't Defenders, was it 10 or was it 8 episodes?
It was 8, and somehow that still felt a little too long.
It still felt a little too long. Just imagine, the final season of Game of Thrones is going to be 6 episodes, 6 longer episodes for sure. Season 7 was 7 episodes, and every season before that was 10. It's, as a screenwriter, it's I don't want to try to argue for fewer episode orders for TV shows, because that actually is bad for TV writers, because it means that there's a longer break between seasons that you have to sustain yourself with the money that you got paid for the time that you're on the show. But storytelling wise, Stranger Things was 8 episodes, 9 episodes in season 2, back to 8. You don't do your show and the content favors by getting these long episode orders. I know that the numbers work out for Netflix. They must, because
this show specifically got crazy numbers last year before we knew what it was.
Right. Yeah.
Scott Buck.
Yeah, it was definitely a blockbuster. And I think just that Netflix algorithm of the next show's going to start in 30 seconds or whatever, you're just like, whatever, I'll just watch it. So the binge culture, favors 13-episode runs because people are just going to watch it all anyway. But yeah, I think you can get much more rich, dense storytelling by just like condensing it a bit.
100%. And also, I don't know if you watched season 2 of Luke Cage. Danny shows up and he has one episode and he is there. They make this great. There's a great line about it. It's like, hey, you seem chilled out, and he's like, yeah, I'm centered, and like
kind of redeemed him a bit. From
100%. But also season 1, he's Danny Tantrum 100%. He's just like, I'm upset about plane crash with parents, Fire Fist, and you're like, I don't care. This is you've done this tantrum at least twice for 13 episodes. So if he's chill and he's just a fighter now and he's like a vigilante, but he has his own take on it that's different from Daredevil, great. Let's see that. I'm on board with that.
Yeah. Well, again, this season drops on September 7th, and let us know what excited you most about this trailer, what you're most looking forward to, and yeah, we look forward to watching it when it comes out.
Do you think he will be snapped away at the end of the season?
Yeah, we'll get. A lot of you guys have asked, like, are these characters going to be faded away? It sounds like. I don't know. They're
probably
too
not.
separate from it.
All
they do is reference a battle in New York.
What if Danny finally got redeemed? We're like, yo, Iron Fist, he's the best. Gone.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Uh-oh, never came back. Uh-oh.
Yeah. Maybe Thanos could snap away half the episodes of all these seasons. We'll be in a much better place. Ooh boy.
You hear that, Marvel?
A quick update on the sequel to Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home. Tom Holland posted an Instagram video from the movie's set making a joke about how he does all of his own stunts when in the background a stunt performer dressed as Peter Parker is visible getting wiped out by a giant wave of water. Now, this has actually led to some speculation over what caused this attack. In the Spider-Man comics, of course, there's a villain known as Hydro Man who has the ability to manipulate water after Spider-Man knocked him from a cargo ship that was doing some like experiments on the ocean water, and that's
so Sandman, but instead of the beach, water. It was water.
Now, if Hydro Man does become part of Far From Home's plot, he will be joining what sounds like a very crowded field of villains. So there was a report that Michael Keaton will return as the Vulture, plus possibly Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, plus Numan Akar, who some are saying could be playing Chameleon.
Oh boy!
Not to mention, remember, there's Michael Mando's appearance in the Homecoming post-credits scene as Matt Gargan, aka Scorpion. So that would be 5 villains. Either there's going to be like another version of the non-Sinister Six that are all the villains that are teaming up against Spider-Man here, or there's something else going on. But yeah, of those villains, which do you think would be the most compelling?
I think, so one of the cool parts of Spider-Man 3, granted, but like is seeing how Sandman, like how he was brought to life and how he'd fight Spider-Man, because there's not really much he could do.
Right.
And so seeing an element like that in this movie, pretty cool. And Hydro Man, fun. He turns into a big water spout sometimes. I think that's fun. But you know what? They nailed having 3 characters in the first movie. I think adding 2 more, they could make it work. And if it's just like side characters kind of just building out the world and not making it a direct threat, great. Do that. Easy. That way it's like, you know that there's threats at home and threats abroad that are against Peter Parker. It's pretty cool.
That does sound good. When I hear reports of both Michael Keaton and Jake Gyllenhaal possibly playing villains, I mean, those are 2 heavyweights. Like they're both like Oscar-nominated, Oscar-winning, Oscar-nominated at least, actors who either one of them would probably be the primary villain or primary antagonist. So to hear both of them being part of this movie, plus a bunch of, and I love Michael Mando from Better Call Saul. That guy's great. So I think any one of these people could be a villain on their own. But yeah, if they can handle the balance well enough, and you know, it's just a wave of water that we're looking at. I mean, that could be anything, really.
Could
just something big falls in the water, and he's next to like Splash Mountain, and he just gets splashed. That's all that's going on there.
He just didn't have good footing. Yeah.
Hydro Man, I had to be reminded exactly who he was. I'm like, and then I remembered there's a ride at Universal Studios Islands of Adventure in Orlando where there's like, you go through and you're like in the scoop, and Hydro Man is one of them. So I was like, oh yeah, he kind of took me back. Scream is also one of them, you know, one of the symbiotes.
Oh.
Yeah. So it wasn't the Sinister Six. They just picked someone that would be cool to see in 3D because you're sitting in this thing and they like swipe at you and then they spray water at you, and that was Hydro Man. It's a fun ride.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's swing from Spider-Man on the big screen to the screen you have to throw your controller at when your stupid mom makes you go to bed early. We're talking Spider-Man on PS4, guys. It released some gameplay footage this week, and if you look closely, some Easter eggs in the Marvel Cinematic Universe showed up. Spider-Man swings around the skyscrapers of New York City. You can see the Sanctum Sanctorum of Doctor Strange, as well as Tony Stark's Avengers Tower. Now, this does not necessarily mean that Doctor Strange or the Avengers or Iron Man will definitely appear in the game, but pretty much everyone else is. Like, Daredevil and the Avengers will get referenced, but there's also like Kingpin and Miles Morales, Norman Osborn, and Electro and Rhino, and everyone's going to be in this game. But there was that gameplay footage that we were talking about before we shot, where it was like earlier, and there was like that cliffhanger, what if moment, and Spider-Man looks up and he's like, "You?" And there's some theories that it could be Iron Man because the light beams onto him, or it could be Venom because some people are hearing some noises that kind of sound like Venom. Who else do you think might be that surprise?
The Guardians
cameo?
of the Galaxy. That's why I have all those lights, and they're like, "Wait, you? Because really, why would you be here at all?" And then the what's the Hooked on a Feeling plays, and they just kind of kill all the people, fly away. Super confusing. No, you could do light wise. It's kind of because it's like a light. It's like something bright.
Yeah,
I think Iron Man makes the most sense, or the Avengers. So you could get like not a helicarrier, but you can get like a Quinjet, or you could get like other characters like that are teaming up with him to take him down, or because you don't see Mr. Negative in that shot, do you? I think
he
you do.
is. He's behind him. Yeah, he's earlier in that fight.
I was going to say a helicopter because you saw him in a couple clips.
Right. Yeah. It's hard to know because it's also kind of hard to pin down exactly like where in the cinematic. It's not in the cinematic universe, obviously, but how this relates to the Marvel universe. I think these are just like settings and locations. In that other footage I was talking about, he's on, I believe, the Raft prison. So I imagine they're just going to be using these things to populate the world without like definitively putting where in the timeline he is and what characters he might have met or might know. I just assume it's probably from the Marvel comics, so whatever Marvel comic Spider-Man might know could be in the list of people who would show up there.
It would be cool to see a Wakandan embassy. That would be pretty cool too. That was a tease that someone thought they were going to get in New York, but hey, I'll be happy. I'm already happy with this. Yeah. So this game looks beautiful, and like you said, it's September 7th. I think is when it's coming out, and that was the same date I believe as Iron Fist season 2.
Yeah, oh boy.
So what are people going to decide?
Sophie's choice there.
Yeah,
Yikes.
I think I know what I might be doing. I'm going to be honest.
Well, let's move on to another update that actually just came out today. The new Watchmen series on HBO was officially announced with Damon Lindelof as executive producer. The series will premiere sometime in 2019, and it will follow different characters than the ones in Alan Moore's graphic novel. Remember those Rorschach and the comedian Night Owl, Silk Spectre, Dr. Manhattan, etc. The cast will include Jeremy Irons, Regina King, Don Johnson, Tim Blake Nelson, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II in the upcoming Aquaman movie, and a ton of other people, but we don't know who they're playing. It sounds like it's going to be all new characters. But here's the synopsis as released in the press release. It's set in an alternate history where superheroes are treated as outlaws. Watchmen embraces the nostalgia of the original groundbreaking graphic novel while attempting to break new ground of its own. It's about as vague as it comes, right? HBO announced in a short video on social media with the iconic smiley face comedian logo and the tagline, "Nothing ever ends." Now, Nothing Ever Ends is actually a reference to Dr. Manhattan's chilling final words to Adrian Ozymandias at the end of the graphic novel, who, spoiler warning if you haven't read it, Ozymandias staged a genocidal attack that was like a trick to unite the United States and Soviet Union against a common enemy and to essentially end the Cold War and a nuclear Armageddon that was quickly approaching. And Manhattan's suggestion was that this wasn't really the end of the war, that every event has unforeseen consequences, which we saw a hint of at the end of The Watchmen, where Rorschach had sent out the truth to a newspaper implying Ozymandias' conspiracy would be exposed to the world. So hopefully this kind of deals with the aftermath of that.
That is an amazing tagline. And also, if you guys are familiar with DC Comics going on right now, Doomsday Clock is a story where it's dealing with Watchmen. And the first issue is about a year after those papers get published and what happens to the world. Because actually it's about like 3 years. So you get to see that Ozymandias was kind of right. Like there were good things that
necessary
happened.
Evil.
And then they were able to prove that Ozymandias was behind all of what he said, and then everything spirals out from there. So that if you guys want a story in between that will have nothing to do with this Doomsday Clock, and also you get DC characters in there as well. But it's such a great way to pick up because it's like there's no way things go good, right? There's no way because it's a big lie. It's an enormous lie.
And It's an interesting ethical debate. Like, well, was it worth it if it just tricked like these two like trigger-happy nations from nuking each other? I mean, how many people died in New York? And I mean, it was different in the graphic novel. It was like an alien attack.
Yeah.
In the movie, they just used it as Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
It's
which, by the way, I think is kind of a better idea. Which I think is
it's simpler.
It's simpler, and it's people can connect with that easier on the screen. I think let's say 9 million. I think it was a crazy big.
Pretty
number.
much the entire population of Manhattan was vaporized, but in the book it's way bloodier. You see like people's
basically
blood
it's like a
spread out
psychic bomb, so their brains turn to mush.
Yeah, it's awful.
Fun little tease if you want to read Doomsday Clock. One character is on basically the outskirts, so he only gets affected a little bit, and so it's what happens with like there's people who are on the like outskirts of nuclear fallout where it's like, what happens to those people who didn't get vaporized? Like what happened? Like what does that mean? So it's like psychic fallout basically.
Interesting.
Which is such a great pitch. Totally gonna watch this. Totally on board. Great tagline.
Yeah, and they have a good team behind it. Awesome tagline. I love the little inclusion of the red comedian drop of blood on the final ellipses dot there. But I think looking at what the HBO might want out of this, they have Game of Thrones is ending, in 2019. Summer 2019 looks like when the season's going to come back. We don't have an official premiere date yet, but I imagine we're going to be seeing teasers and trailers during Game of Thrones because they're going to try to piggyback this probably off of Game of Thrones the way that they did with Westworld in its first season. Like we saw trailers for it during Game of Thrones, and then we saw the show come out. I think they're looking for another former Lost creator the way that they did with Westworld to try to spearhead this new piece of IP that they can use to fill the void that will be in our hearts when Game of Thrones is gone.
What do you think? So I'm guessing this ignores the movie. This is based on the
or
graphic
ignores
novel.
or just like moves. Yeah, probably ignores the movie or just the events of it. Maybe inform it. I assume it's going to be taking place after or in a different part of the world.
I mean, like, do you think it'd be interesting to see? Do they go with Dr. Manhattan being the blame, or is it alien tentacle monster?
Oh yeah,
the evil hentai psychic thing.
As much as I really like Zack Snyder's movie, I think it's a really underappreciated movie that I would love to do like video about. I think. I would imagine everything that Damon Lindelof has said, it looks like he's going back to the source material. He put out this whole statement about how he read Watchmen over and over again with his dad. It was like a very like important thing because I mean the people who love Watchmen, the fans of it, are rightfully very protective of the story. It's such a like very interesting, unique story in the world of comics and very inspirational for everything that came after it. So I think he just wanted to let people know I'm not going to ruin this. Don't worry. So I would imagine he's going to go to the source material as opposed to building off of Zack Snyder's work. Yeah,
I'm getting chills just from the finale of that book is perfect. It's it's the perfect build up. Such great characters. Read it if you haven't. If you saw the movie, trust me, it's not like reading the book.
Yeah, it's a very different experience. Yeah, for sure. And let us know your thoughts on this and what type of characters would you want to see, because we still have no idea who these outlaw superheroes will be. Because I like all the ones from Watchmen. I hope there's some kind of version of Rorschach in the story because I loved him in that. But we're going to move on to our new Rockstars Lightning Round. There's only two of us here today, but so we're each going to do one and then one for both of us. Nice. You guys were great to tweet us some questions. I'm going to fire them at Sam, and he's got one for me, and we're just going to have to answer as quickly and without hesitation as possible.
Ready?
Here we go.
Hold on. I'm gripping. Okay, I'm ready.
Sam at ZachMan87 wants to know, does Doctor Strange style his hair with magic or does he style it with actual hair gel?
Magic. And magic. Yeah. Here we go. For Erik from @BruceGameFreak and several others, they asked, who should Marvel Studios look to direct Guardians Volume 3 since Disney is not going to reinstate James Gunn?
Yeah, so that's we didn't really talk about that in our rundown, but yeah, it sounds like the latest reports are that despite like talks that they might try to rehire him, they will use James Gunn's script for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but will not rehire him. If you're gonna look for someone new, I don't know, maybe someone who looks like James Gunn, but it's not James Gunn. Shames pun.
There you go.
Should get to hire, but it is actually James Gunn. You could do something like what Spielberg did with Poltergeist, right? Like Spielberg didn't get the director credit because like the studios wouldn't let him direct both that and E.T. at the same time. So he got like his first AD director to direct Poltergeist, and that guy got credit for. But realistically, it was Spielberg's movie. You could just, James Gunn is gonna be a producer on it. It's going to be his.
He's going to get
screenplay.
Crazy amounts of money from it.
Yeah, I mean, might as well just have him shoot. Okay, Taika Waititi is obviously everyone's pick for it. Like Thor Ragnarok is pretty much the exact same tone as Guardians of the Galaxy, and he has familiarity with all the characters. That would be my pick.
That's a pretty good pick. All right, final one. This is for both of us from Obi-Wan Baloney.
Good name.
If you take a Batman to lunch, which Batman would you take? Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, George Clooney, Christian Bale, or Batfleck? Lightning, go. 3, 2,
for
1,
me,
go. 3, 2, 1, go. 3, 2, 1. Val Kilmer. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I was gonna say Val. No, I would say Michael Keaton because Michael Keaton is gonna be a laugh a minute with him. The guy's always speaking in a different voice, and
I want to talk to Val Kilmer and be like, "What have you been doing since then?"
Yeah.
For real, what have you been doing?
You know that he looks like a foodie. He's gonna know where to take you. I mean, we can agree not Bale though, right?
Nah.
He's a bit temperamental.
In public, he doesn't know how to behave like a person.
Oh, someone will drop a tray.
Yeah.
Like a real amateur.
Really?
Yeah.
Play the clip.
Yeah.
We don't have it.
Yep. Okay. Well, now comes the time for a 15-second shout out where both of us have 15 seconds to shout out, plug, or ramble about anything we want. Sam?
Ooh, okay. Hard to Say Goodbye, new podcast. You should check it out. Patreon.com/
that's your Game of
Hard
Thrones.
to Say Goodbye. Game of Thrones rewatch podcast. I'm rewatching all of it. We're doing 2 episodes a week. They're 30 minutes too, so it's nice and tight. That way you can just get like quick reviews. Also, our co-host Trisha Hirschberger, if you're familiar with her, she is reading has the books open at the same time. So we're comparing like big moments from the series as we go every 2 weeks, and you can watch the episodes along with us, and you can like do Google Hangouts with us, and you get like there's there's a bunch of different things, and we have to hit this goal so we can make sure that like it's funded for the rest of the year, and if we hit that, it's pretty exciting. I'm very excited to get into this because now I've watched the series once last year, watching again like when Daenerys walks into the spa in the very first episode, and I was like,
She's the unburnt. Oh yeah.
I didn't even realize it was that early on that they were setting this up. And so it's so cool as a very like a novice fan to be getting into it. And then my 2 other co-hosts have watched. This is like their 7th time through. So it's extremely exciting. So check that out. Sorry, longer than 15 seconds. Erik, what about you?
No, I just to tag on to that. I similarly rewatched some stuff, and I don't know about you, but the biggest thing that struck me was like how underfunded the sets were compared to the latest. Like the later series seasons look so like cinematic and beautiful, and it was clear that it was like in its first season HBO was like, we'll give you some money to do these, but you're going to be reusing a lot of the same sets and way more dogs. I think that was the craziest thing to me. Every episode has just like dogs. All the direwolves, they got like big huskies.
Yeah, it's
like
crazy.
Now they CGI all the animals because it's way cheaper, I guess, to CGI rather than because you have to have like 2 dogs in case one goes crazy and you got to pay a dog trainer. But like, yeah, that shot where Tyrion wakes up in the dog kennel, I'm like, I don't remember just seeing a bunch of dogs on camera in the later seasons.
No, I was surprised of how often the direwolves would show up, and also it makes way more sense on the rewatch. I'm like, how are the direwolves growing so much between episodes? Like, it's been months. They're growing normally. It makes sense. Yeah.
It's also fun to rewatch it because you realize how wrong, in my case, you were when you first watch a show. It's not historical fiction. It's not England and Scotland, which I really thought it was for like 3 episodes. I'm like, I guess, the wall. I guess there's a big ice wall somewhere in Scotland. I felt like a real idiot.
It's metaphorical,
For my 15-second shout out, I saw BlacKkKlansman last night. Spike Lee's new movie. It's really, really good. I think it's a very important movie to see, regardless of your politics. I think we can agree that certain hate groups in this country are not welcome here.
Are not a bunch of good guys.
Not good guys. But it's like an interesting, because Spike Lee is, a fascinating filmmaker. He's a very like politically minded filmmaker. So his characters, sometimes when I watch it, I have to like remind myself, be like, oh, characters don't necessarily speak with the same kind of level of humanity and representational acting style as like other movies do. All of his characters are symbols, so like they're all serving a broader political agenda. It's almost like kind of watching I'm about to sound like a real theater dork, but a Brechtian style play. It's presentational. It's meant to serve a political point, but it's like a political point that like whether or not you should agree with it, right? Like that's something that like I don't think there are 2 equal sides to this one. Now we didn't really have a trivia question because it's just the 2 of us. Trivia kind of works with more, but why don't we just do a GIF of shame anyway?
Yay!
Where we both draw
I haven't been here in a while. I want to do one.
Yeah.
GIF of shame. GIF of shame. 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 Shame.
I've never done one before.
Oh, you want to do it?
Yeah.
Go
so you
for
can
it.
do one too. We'll both do one. And I'll just read the goodbyes as we do this. Sam, which one did you have?
Task: do the floss dance move to the best of your ability.
Oh, okay.
What is the floss dance?
That's the one where it's like the. I don't want to do.
Oh
that
yikes!
one.
Oh yeah, Devin, you did it.
Best of your ability.
Devin, you did it
keywords
too
there.
fast.
Yeah. For me, I have to non-verbally convince the tiny angel and devil on my shoulders to make out. Okay. So I'll do that as I say goodbye. Okay. Thank you for watching New Rockstars this week, this episode of New Rockstars News. I want to thank our host, Sam Bashor, and myself, Erik Voss, at Sam Bashor, at EA Voss. You guys, non-verbally. Comment down below and tweet us at New Rockstars. Like this video, share it around, subscribe to New Rockstars for all the deep dives and the stuff that you love.
I don't know if I can. I don't think I'm doing it right.
See you next week. Bye. All right, you two, just do it. Yeah. Look at them. Oh, look at them. Oh, 7 minutes in heaven or hell in that one. How about both? Look at him go. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.